Hello, book lovers! Welcome to the 76th episode of Kiwi and the Bird, Book Nerds in Session.
I'm Taylor, the bird, and I love Cold Stone ice cream.
I'm Keimi, the Kiwi, and I love money.
There was something really genuine about the way you said it. I think that's what got to me. Is that some people, they say it as a joke, but you really meant it.
I mean it like 80% as a joke and 20% real. Because you need money, that's real.
You do need money.
But it's a little bit socially inappropriate to say it, so I have to like play it off as a joke.
I can't just ask for that. I have to pretend like I don't want it.
Exactly. Exactly.
And in this episode, we're taking 15 minutes to review Veronica Roth's When Among Crows, an adult fantasy that asks the question, who's really human?
And if you're wondering how our book recommendations go, it's simple. Taylor and I chat about the characters, the setting, the writing style, and our favorite things from When Among Crows. Plus, we do this without sharing any spoilers.
Or if we do, it's on accident.
And we'll probably edit it out.
Stay until the end to hear our official rating of the book.
Before we get to the episode, if you like Kiwi and the Bird and want to support us, our Venmo is at Kiwi and the Bird. Thank you for helping us live the book nerd dream.
Now, on to the recommendation.
Before we begin, though, slight detour. Let's talk about what's in this book and what's not in this book. This book has the slightest hint of romance, curse words, but it's not sexual. If it was a movie, it would be rated R, but for profanity and some gore, nothing else.
This isn't like those spicy ones where when you read it, you're worried about your soul.
Yeah. And where you're going to go after you die.
Because sometimes I worry.
The Holy Order has one purpose: to cleanse the darkness in the world that takes form in supernatural creatures. Having both knowledge about these knights and their prey, Demeter seeks a presence with Baba Yaga to grant him his one hidden desire. But to get an audience with the infamous witch, he'll need the information of one Zamora, Allah. And why would a Zamora work with a mortal? For a cure for her curse, of course. A cure only Demeter can procure. That was kind of a hard sentence, I'm not going to lie to you.
Because you had cure, curse, and procure. Mm-hmm. And of course. Mm-hmm. Oh, and cure again.
Anyway, together, these two must navigate the shadowy depths of Chicago, battling against time. But every second, Allah's madness grows, and Demeter's secrets threaten to come unraveled.
Dun, dun, dun.
Aren't we all battling time, though?
We really are. That's literally the one limit of human existence is
right?
time. And also the flu.
And also disease.
And also cars.
Gosh, yes. Yes.
And murderers. Actually, there's a lot that limits the human experience. Now, our first character is Demeter. Mm-hmm. And 3 words that we would use to describe him are traumatized, pretty, and reserved. So, Keimi, what did you think about our pretty traumatized, reserved fellow?
I will say it's not really, those aren't words that you would typically think come together in one person, but I do think it describes him very well. Like, this poor boy, man, I don't know how old he is. I think he's somewhere in his 20s.
I think he's a young adult, but actually, sorry, young adult means young. He's an adult.
I think he's an adult.
Who's young.
Who just happens to be young. I liked him as our main character. I think I liked the aura of mystery around him that we had throughout the throughout the book, the very short book. And I did like the way Veronica Roth kind of wrote his character and kind of like, she really let the readers imply what his big secret is, as, you know, an author should. I do kind of wish the book was entirely in his perspective, though. I think that would have been very interesting, especially with all the things that weren't told to us. I think that was one of the biggest advantages to this book, especially with as short as it is. And so that his perspective was the one that actually kept me hooked the most into the story.
Yes, I agree. He was very intriguing, our little traumatized soul. I think with Demeter, he had a quality of goodness to him where even though you sense that he's had a rough past, that he's just trying to be a good little dude right now. And there's something about characters who are in so much confliction that you just feel for them because you're like, you are torturing yourself with yourself every waking moment. And I feel bad. So yes, in terms of being one of our protagonists, I did think he was a strong protagonist. And I did like the feeling that he gave to the story. He had kind of more of a mellow, chill vibe to him. But again, it was undercut with that really big feeling of emotion and sensitivity that he's feeling. So I was like, you're good in my book, dude. Even though you're not in your own.
No.
You're good in mine.
He was like a sinner, like the sinner in his mind.
Yeah, seriously. And I was like, I think I could name a few other people.
Like, yeah, no, people have done worse things than you. Like, you can chill like a little bit.
And you feel really bad about it. Yeah. So.
And that's just the first step.
In recovery.
Yes. Our second character is Allah, our supernatural creature. 3 words we would use to describe her are indignant, sharp, and gifted. What did you think about our supernatural Allah, Taylor?
I'm pretty sure that indignant, sharp, and gifted is what you'd call people who were in the gifted and talented program in school. That's who they grew up to be.
So us.
But overall, okay, with Allah, I liked her base. She had that sharpness. She kind of had that grittiness, kind of like that I can survive the underworld of a city feeling. Mm-hmm. It felt like she knew what she was doing. She had a past. She had present traumas. She had conflict. I think overall, she was solid. But I felt like sometimes I couldn't quite get a sense of her. Yes. Because she would do something that was badass, but then a second later, she'd be turning away from blood. And I was like, but you've literally, like, slit a throat. But now you're turning away from blood? And so I think it was little things like that where, because the story is shorter, I feel like I need a lot of consistency in the characters to even just go along the ride with it because it's such a quick ride. So I feel like with Allah, I wanted a little bit more, maybe precision. I don't know if that's the best word, but that's the one that's coming to mind. What about you, though?
I do agree. I do like her place in the story and what place she had, but something was missing from her. Like, Demeter had a very strong base, as you said, and we could really see his motivation and what drove him through the entirety of the story, and we didn't quite have that with Allah. She did have her good moments here and there, like, I guess I can't actually give specific details. That's fine, though.
We'll let you allude to them.
Well, I'll just work around it, I guess. I like that she was part of the supernatural world, but she also kind of didn't feel a part of it. I like that aspect of her character, you know, kind of like the kind of where do I belong sense. But I also feel like that feeling wasn't given the time that it should have. Right? Because that was kind of like her whole arc in the story. It was just, all of these things have happened to me, and I'm feeling this way, and I don't know if I really belong here. And then she's kind of like taken on this very sporadic, very spontaneous adventure. And I would have liked to see that come to a resolution.
Yes.
I mean, she's not a bad character by any means. I wanted a little more.
Or maybe some more time with her.
Yes.
All right, now that we've chatted characters, let's move on to setting. When Among Crows takes place in Chicago, and Chicago gets a new magical twist as our main characters explore its dark, dangerous, and Central European-influenced underbelly. So, Keimi, what did you think about Chicago?
With magic.
Or just normal Chicago, if you have any particular thoughts.
I mean, Chicago on its own, just like in our world, it sounds like there's a lot of crime and murder, so no thank you. Chicago, in terms of the story, I liked the idea of just magic infused in a place that we already know about. I do think it kind of took me out of the magic a little bit. I don't think it was quite as interweaved as I wanted it to be. That could be my own fault, though, because I am currently reading a contemporary romance novel that is, the setting is in Michigan, and so Lake Michigan has been mentioned, and so my brain just goes back to there, so I'm kind of just taken out of that fantasy world and put back into contemporary romance, so that could be my fault. I won't lie to you on that front. But, I mean, I think Chicago is a good place as any. Like, whenever you have these kinds of stories where it's, like, real world but fantasy is kind of just in its underbelly, you want bigger cities for that because it doesn't make sense for it to happen in a small town. No offense, Twilight.
It's because people notice too much in a small town. It's right. Like, oh, hey, that Colin family, they eat animals. And you'd be like, eat them? Like, cook them? Or no.
Raw.
So in terms of setting, I did like Chicago because, like you said, in terms of magic, it's hard to have magic in a smaller town. It's because it hides more easily in a bigger city. What I really liked about the setting is that I felt like either the author had lived there or had really researched it, because the descriptions of Chicago felt very knowledgeable. Now, with that, while I appreciate the detail and the history and the world building in a sense that was done about it, because it did feel very in-depth, I don't know if maybe this is me and how my mind works, but I felt like it was hard to kind of place the locations within Chicago. I'm like, so we went from this place to this place, but where is that in terms of drive time, or north, south, east, west? You know, like where are these in association to each other? I think that was kind of the main difficulty I was having.
Yes, I do agree with that. The descriptions of the actual place really placed you into the story, but the transitions is where it kind of faltered.
I'm like, are we doing a 15-minute drive, or is this like a 45-minute?
Overall, it's done fairly well, especially with the amount of pages it has.
Yes.
It's kind of like Ice Planet Barbarians in a strange way, because it doesn't have a lot of pages, but it does give you a basically fully formed world.
Yes.
Which is not an easy thing to do.
No. Yeah, having that much information with so few pages, it's not easy.
No. So, props to Veronica Roth on that. Speaking of props to Veronica Roth, though, I did want to talk about her writing style, in that I appreciated how concise she was with her descriptions, because I often do think that authors kind of like tend to ramble on in their descriptions of things, and I'm like, okay, I can just skim this and just go straight to the dialogue. But I appreciate that she kind of kept things short and stout. One thing I did wish that she did differently, though, was the way she handled her exposition, specifically in her mythology. Because this is based, I think, in Polish.
I think so.
Mythology. I could be wrong. It's somewhere in Europe. Central European, I believe. And that's not a mythology that is very recognizable or very famous. So to introduce it is great, but you need to have more explanation than just with a vampire would need, if that makes sense. Because, like, vampires and werewolves are already, like, very well known, right? So you don't need a lot of explanation for them. But a lot of these supernatural creatures were completely new to me, and it's in a completely different language. So it kind of takes a little bit more foundation for us to, like, be like, oh, so this is what it looks like, this is what it does, this is what this. And in some ways, Veronica Roth did that really well. There are some supernatural creatures I was like, no, got it, love it. But there are others that were introduced where I was like, did they need to be introduced, though? Because you're not really expanding on this. And so I kind of wish there was more of a balance on that.
Yeah, so and overall, I think, like you said, great job with descriptions, setting, keeping the flow of the story. Again, this is a short book. This is, what did you count? It was like
163 pages.
163 pages. So I think the author did a really great job of getting a lot done in those 163 pages. And I appreciate that it was a story that wanted to dive into a mythology or mythological creatures that aren't as popular. Mm-hmm. But like you said, with that, it's difficult because then, you know, like you said, you say vampire and you know that it's someone who drinks blood and can't be out in daylight and X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. But with this, because the creatures aren't as well known, it's harder to place it in your mind immediately. You definitely need time to sit with it, or you need something that's super identifiable about that particular creature. And so while I think that the efforts that were taken with this book were probably the best you could, given the amount of pages, I would really have to read through it a lot for the creatures to be really in my mind.
I honestly had to look some of them up because I was just like, I just can't imagine this in my head. Specifically with the owl vampires.
Well, when you described it as owl vampires, though, I was like, I was like, yeah, owl vampires.
Overall, though, she did a pretty good job of like keeping to the story and making a story that actually flowed within the amount that she had.
I mean, it's 163 pages. That's hard.
That's hard.
Yeah.
Ooh, now it's our favorite section. Also known as our favorite things.
Where we talk about, or actually we don't really talk about them. We just list out our favorite things about the book.
I mean, could we go into more explanation? Sure. And actually we kind of do in our book discussion episode. So check that out.
But for right now, it's fun to just kind of throw things at you with no context. And if you read the book, then you get it. And if you don't, then you just kind of wonder.
Yeah. You'll get to read it and see what it's all about.
You'll get to see what some of these mean.
But now, if you like
spine swords,
illusions,
owl vampires,
as previously mentioned, zombie vampires,
skinny vampires,
rude grandmas.
She really is rude, though. That grandma had no chill.
Yeah, she really did.
Curses,
dead extended relatives,
Lake Michigan,
bows and arrows,
red flowers,
cage matches,
crows,
knights,
and fingernails.
Then you might like this book.
It might be the one for you.
It might just be. Maybe.
Might just. Yeah, we can't guarantee anything.
I can't guarantee. I mean, the spine swords make it sound really cool. I'm not going to lie to you.
The spine swords are freaking legit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of makes me want one, but then not at the same time.
It sounds painful.
It does, but I just kind of like the look of being like, but I don't want the pain.
No. Yeah.
Painless. Epidural?
Yes. For the spine. Fluid. All of it.
Now, Keimi, based on our unique rating scale of 1 to 7, 1 being literal trash and 7 being fangirl mania, what would you rate When Among Crows by Veronica Roth? And if you'd like to provide your reason why, go ahead. It's your floor.
This is a difficult one to rate because it took me a little bit to get my bearings on my opinion of the book after I finished it. Because I was just kind of like thinking of all the things that I liked, things that confused me, all the things like that. But overall, I do think I liked most of the book. So for that, I think I'm going to go with the 5.1.
Ooh, a feeling my shelf.
Feeling my shelf. Feeling my shell.
My It's actually so funny that that's your rating because...
Are you going to go lower?
Oh, well, only by a little. So yeah, I think in regards to what I think about the book, I think this book achieved a lot for so little pages. Because it got a lot of information out there. I think it has a really good base of characterization, and it has interesting characters who have conflict. And I think that overall, it did its job in being a shorter story. I think the difficulty for me with this book is that it's one that I don't understand why it's shorter.
Yes.
Because I feel like it could be expanded. So I think because of that feeling, I was going to go with a solid 5. A feeling my shelf. So when you said 5.1, I was like, we're synergized.
I was thinking about a 5, but I was like, that feels like a little bit, like, I think I like to add the decimal points because it makes me feel special.
Well, and also, too, it's like, it encapsulates my thoughts more if I'm like 1.539478.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us on Kiwi and the Bird. Let us know on Spotify's Q&A or on social media what you thought about our rating for When Among Crows by Veronica Roth.
Speaking of social media, be sure to follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, because we don't call it X, and more at Kiwi and the Bird. If you have any questions about the show, feel free to send them to kiwiandthebird@gmail.com.
Yes, we have an Gmail address.
I'm not good at keeping it clean and organized and clear, but we have one.
Join us for our next episode where we discuss When Among Crows in full detail.
And remember, like a library, at Kiwi and the Bird, happens.